Hello again, I am Blunty, and I want to read for you a comment that I left on a forum post a couple of days ago. It's been bubbling up in my mind very frequently since I posted it, and I want to kind of put it out there to a wider audience to see if it rings true for other people as well.
Unacceptable!
The post I replied to was inquiring about a little current of hostility that was often detected or were confronted by in a forum for discussing asexuality. They noticed that it wasn't uncommon for discussions of romantic issues within a forum for asexuals to be met with hostility or at least dismissal. In other words, they saw what is commonly called in many communities as gatekeeping. But specific to queer topics, it's something that has always particularly trolled me a little bit, and I think with the comment I left on this post, I finally found the right words to fully express just how I feel about this kind of gatekeeping. So here is what I said. A sub-minority of any and every LGBTQIA plus label has always had the urge to passionately defend their own very specific and usually very narrow and unforgiving interpretation of what is and is not, what that label actually means, because these labels are important to them and they sometimes forget to have the empathy to see that it just might be important to other people in slightly different ways than their interpretation for them, and that's an okay thing to have. But here's the secret. These labels aren't for other people to use to define us or pigeonhole us. They're for ourselves. They're our tools. We choose what we feel is right, what fits best for us. It's not a license test we have to pass to have that label. It's a verbal framework of ideas and concept that help us put our own sense of self and our own internal relationship to sex and gender and romance into a useful context, so we can then deconstruct it and understand it, and therefore ourselves and how we interact with others better. They're for us to use for ourselves. In my case, being a very muddy mix of being bipolar and autistic, mental health issues, which on their own made relationships both platonic and romantic often tricky, they sat on top of what I eventually figured out was my ace stuff. But once I did find the labels grey ace and pan-romantic and use them as a context and perspective for looking back at my life thus far and going forward, a lot of crap that I'd gone through, suffered through, being baffled by, suddenly made tremendous and perfect sense. It crystallized, just with the help of a couple of words. They were useful to me, and not one damn person on this planet has any right to tell me that I'm using them wrong. They've made me feel more complete, more understood, and more comfortable with myself, and that is their use. They are my labels for me. Just the same as if someone else feels grey ace in a different way to me, or have different requirements or triggers for a desire for more physical intimacy than they, or a more pure ace would feel. And I have absolutely no right to tell them that they're doing it wrong because they're doing it differently to me with the same label. Umbrella terms like ace are useful because they allow us to have a broader community to share with and save us from getting into ever smaller little echo chambers and feeling isolated and alone and disconnected. That last part is why I usually use queer as my label, unless and until someone specifically needs to know more detail about how I work. Or, of course, if I'm trying to spread some understanding to someone who has asked for or seeks better understanding or sometimes needs, which is where empathy starts. Empathy starts with understanding. So that's what I said. That's what labels mean to me. I think they're useful things. I think they have to mean something. I think they have to be generally umbrella terms for a bunch of stuff. And as we sort of gradually carve them up into smaller and smaller pieces, they mean more and more specific stuff. But they still are malleable. They're still tools. There's still clay in which we can mold into the shape of ourselves, so we can look at ourselves from a different perspective, from outside, using these words as lenses, using them as perspective shifts, using them as context. That's why they're important to people. That's why they're important to me, because they help me along my path of going, oh, that's how I work. That's why I was always having trouble with this, or that's why I was confused by this, or that's why this relationship had this issue, or this is how I can approach it in the future to make a healthier sort of interaction between me and another person and help them understand me and help me understand them. And oh, it's all so good now that I have these little tools, this little tray of words with which to go, hey, this one here, this one, well, that's useful right about there. But does that sound right to you? Is that how you feel about labels? Did I alter or reinforce your thoughts towards gatekeeping in general? And by the way, I do truly believe, in fact, gatekeeping is important, in my opinion. It's important to gatekeep to some extent, to keep a focus, to keep community and identity, to exclude problematic or disruptive people, or just unwelcome distractions. Gatekeeping is useful when used correctly, but it's where and why that line is drawn in the sand that I think about a lot. You know, what is the right kind of gatekeeping? What is too much? What is too restrictive? What is not restrictive enough? And sort of each different community, each different topic really will have a different line in that. And I think it's important not to get too tied up in that, and also not to throw around the word gatekeeping as just a way to dismiss someone's opinion. Oh, you're just gatekeeping, and not have to think about what they have to say, because people use words like that all the time to dismiss other people. But yeah, words and how we use them and why we use them and when we use them, they're pretty important in my opinion. Words are fun. I love words. Language. Not just words, but language, when you smoosh all the words together to do things. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the patrons. I'm Blunt here. We'll catch you next time.